we can get started. So, welcome, David Bronner, our very first guest on Community is the Medicine. I think most of you probably are familiar with David as the CEO of Dr. Bronner's soap company. And we're really grateful to have you as our very first guest on the podcast, Community is the Medicine, where we envision what a community-centered future for psychedelics can look like, put on by the Brooklyn Psychedelic Society, of which you are a major sponsor. So thank you for joining me, David.
Yeah, well, thank you, brother, for having me.
Yes. You are calling in from San Diego. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Encinitas, so North County, San Diego. It's a sweet town on the coast. Kind of got a nice hippie surfer yoga vibe.
Awesome. How often are you getting out on the surf?
Not nearly as much as I would like, but like at least once or twice a week should be well, I think like as it was really warm, I would at least go hop in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Try to do that at least more like 3 to 4 times. Like even if it was just like 10 minutes, like right at sunset. It's like such medicine, community
Yeah.
and ocean medicine. Yeah.
Yes, the oceanic life forms abound. Have you been surfing most of your life?
I grew up bodyboarding and skimboarding, but not so much surfing. I grew up in LA, in Glendale.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, it wasn't until I came down here that I picked up surfing. So I don't know, like 15 years or maybe 20 years surfing. Yeah,
cool.
but it's all the same. I mean, body surfing, bodyboarding, it's all riding the waves,
Yeah.
having fun. That's the point.
Yeah. And maybe when people think of surfing as like an individual thing, from surfers I've met, it's very communal because you're wading in the water next to your fellow surfers, right? And there's like a culture unto itself there.
Yeah, most breaks are on that vibration. There's a few more aggro point breaks that,
Hmm.
ironically, Swami's, which is right by the Self-Realization Fellowship, is one of the more aggro point breaks that
Cool.
I
Breaking
steer
open the
clear of.
head, literally. Yes. Um, so yeah, thanks for joining me. Obviously, this is going to be probably a psychedelic themed interview and podcast because we are the Brooklyn Psychedelic Society. But if you're open to it, would you mind opening with like your personal story with psychedelics, like the kind of general arc of how you got into it?
Yeah. So you may try a shorter version of this. So yeah, I guess junior year in college, um, or maybe start with sophomore year. Say by second semester, my sophomore year, realized getting high, smoking cannabis with my roommates was so much better than getting drunk at the bars, and just so much fun, and how glorious music was, and just hanging out and laughing and talking on the deep and real, and yeah, just so much better in every way than getting drunk. And yeah, just really started to question, how is it possible that marijuana with it is illegal and you go to jail, and it's so much better in every rational criteria relative to alcohol. So that was, like the beginning. And cannabis still remains my like daily go-to, number one ally. um
Mm.
don't smoke it like I did in college. It's more, kind of in the evening, not that much, but it's
Hmm.
just really helpful to just kind of, meditate and get into the moment. And like all the medicines do this, kind of get you into the appreciation of the magic mystery we live in, and just invest from your ego and, you know,
Hmm.
neurotic obsessing slash anger slash whatever is going on, and just get perspective on yourself. And so cannabis
Definitely.
is hugely important, and it's not often considered in the psychedelic family, but I think is very much so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then yeah, but then mushrooms. So the next year, so I, say I was raised Christian, although I said this Shema, the Central Hebrew prayer, Jewish prayer, in Hebrew and English growing up. But I rejected my Christian faith when I was 13. If God so loved the world, why did he send his one and only son to this one spot? What about the Chinese slash all the other planets? It didn't make a ton of sense. But
You're
then I
saying
was,
it didn't make sense that God would just send one dude
yeah, to one
There's all these
spot.
other
And then the Chinese are
places.
screwed, and
Hmm.
all the other culture, whatever. This the whole fundamentalism of
Hmm.
perspective. Was not yet exposed to liberation theology and more
Mm.
mystical Christian. Fast forward and consider
Hmm.
in some ways that's where I'm at now. But um, yeah, in college I was biology major. I was kind of getting impatient with the implicit or explicit scientific materialism and reductionism, explaining like human consciousness in terms of evolutionary and physical processes only, and just kind of epiphenomena. Um, and then postmodern relativism on the other side. Just kind of getting impatient with that. Like, okay, I mean, it's really important perspectives, but there are universal truths, and we're all
Hmm.
born, we all die, we all laugh, we all cry. And um,
The
yeah,
postmoderns kind of take it too far and like just
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, certainly it's important to break the colonial hegemony of one way of looking at the world and reality, and understand the diversity of perspectives
Hmm. So although
and
you were a bio major, in college you were still kind of grappling with the deeper questions, you think? Like those are always present for you.
yeah. Although I mean, it wasn't like that. Yeah, I would say so, but on a like somewhat unconscious level, not
Hmm.
it's mostly just having fun. But yeah, I took a mushroom chocolate in that context in junior year. And I remember like looking down at my arm and thinking like, what does it mean at a quantum level? Like I'm not different from the world. It's just one continuous energy. And then I looked out the window and it was just, all the trees and buildings and just life, and thinking like, wow, everything out there is living and dying, and it's going to be dead. Everything, the whole world, everyone's going to be dead soon, and then it's going to be reborn. And when I eat and I poop, the
Hmm.
world is pouring through me like a river. Like I'm a
Hmm.
river of energy. I'm not even the same blood and stuff month to month. I'm just, I'm in this dynamic living interflow with the living reality out there. It's not
Hmm.
like some dead world over there and I'm alive over
And
here.
wait,
It's,
this was not a realization you had on beer, you're saying?
yeah, exactly. Right. Or maybe psychoactive beer like they found in some of those ancient temples in Immortality Key or something.
True, Elysian brew.
Yeah. Yeah. A very special beer. But, and not too much of it, or whatever, I guess the right amount. But, yeah. So I would say that was my first kind of unity experience, just experiencing myself as part
Hmm.
of a much bigger reality process. And um but didn't make obviously made a significant impact, but kind of just parked it, I guess. um and
And
then
do you
yeah.
remember how you came across the mushroom chocolate? Like, was it just giving you like, oh, check this out, or like, was it kind of maybe shared with you as like a weed alternative or something, if you remember, or like, what you're
Mm,
just kind of exploring?
yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If it was like in our weed, I mean, we were the stoners of whatever, our dormitory, and then eventually mushroom chocolates found their way into the, well, let's try these. Once you kind of broke open how do you say, stigma around Canada, I just kind of like, okay, well, what else that we've been told all our lives that's wrong? And, what was formerly like, maybe I would look with skepticism at I was now much more available to try and experiment. Um, and I'd actually already taken LSD, but that was not that profound of a trip.
Mhm.
Um, it was interesting, but it wasn't that big a dose and wasn't that whatever. Um, but then it was after college. I went to Amsterdam, so I was just very much on the cannabis kind of trajectory, and um, uh, had a Euro pass. But in Amsterdam, got deep into the squat scene there. They have a pretty enlightened policy that anyone speculating on real estate that isn't doing anything with it is just like wanting to resell it as it appreciates in value at some future date. If you can't show you're doing actually something with it in a year or something, it can be legally squatted. There was this like
Wow.
really thriving, vibrant squat scene. I mean, I hope it's still the case. I haven't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really awesome. We definitely have laws like that in New York. There's this property sitting here
yeah, right.
collecting
It
God
was like
knows
a
how
beautiful
many.
solution to homelessness. And it's just like,
Yeah, So you
Um,
squatted legally then, it sounds
yeah,
like.
so I was
Cool.
in like a squat hotel, and there's all these different squat communities, and
Hmm.
there's like a squat sauna. It was super rad and
Wow.
very international and super cool and very liberating. I mean, the whole society is just liberated and progressive on taking care of their people and being so much more open sexually and yeah, just drug wise and
In
identity wise.
Amsterdam.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
like like this whole other degree of freedom and really getting perspective on like, wow, and then in my squat there was a couple cats that were part of a church in Arkansas that had cannabis as their sacrament, as a First Amendment challenge in 1993. And they were facing 10 years to life because obviously I didn't work out and the church got busted up and like a bunch of people were in jail and they were on the run. And they're just like amazing people and really, really hit home like, damn, like how fucked up our country is and what we're doing and like
Hmm.
drug war and a lot of other shit.
And when was this? Just for context for the
This
listeners.
is 95.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the cannabis was this church's sacrament and they got busted and they were going to face years in
Yeah,
prison.
so they
Okay.
were actually trying. I think the U.S. was trying to extradite them. I mean, it's just these like hippie,
Wow.
sweet cats, and it was just like crazy. And it's the height of the drug war. And,
Mhm.
still, I mean, it was 96 was the first big crack. I mean, that was when we got Prop 215 in California, but this is like right before that. Um, and so it was in that context. And then I was in a relationship crisis with my then girlfriend, who has become my wife, but and we separated about 6 years ago. We're divorced, but she's amazing and actually heads up our family foundation. Um, but at that point, we were in this crisis. Like we hadn't been in touch and hadn't been together that long. But and then a major part of it, she had traveled abroad in Asia for like 9 months, like a couple months after we'd met. And in the relationship, in the medicine, and so a bunch of stuff had gone down. And in this, well, first of all, so I'm on acid and E in this gay trans club that was called the Matzos, also just kind of the freaker central, like with all these all night parties. And
Mm.
this is when trance was huge. Um, and remember, first of all, like kind of going through a series of like kind of like confronting my internalized homophobia
Hmm.
and gender constructs of like, what does it mean to
Hmm.
be straight male versus gay, female, and like
Hmm.
just medicine exploding through all these constructs in myself and kind of seeing like how warped it all is. And, don't be gay, don't be girly, and just all the ways we shame ourselves and shame each other. And so it was like kind of working through and just getting into like, I'm incarnate soul here to get down. And although at a certain point in that process was feeling like I was going to get raped, like,
Mm.
there was just this feeling like as like people were coming in on me
This
and
is while you were in like a gay
like in a
club in
medicine.
Amsterdam. Yeah.
Yeah, just in and it was just this like kind of paranoid thought, but
Yeah.
then it was like, and I know, but then I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go in there because this goes down,
Mm.
like, and like all of a sudden it was like real, and I was like, okay, so what's the least karmic consequence for everybody involved in this? And it's like, well, just surrender and don't make it fucking worse, let them sin worse, kind of thing. And like and surrendered and died and like in ego death it was embraced by the goddess and into the light and just was my heart exploded. I was in the light
Wow.
and then came out um and was like, okay, well, obviously that's not happening and good choice in your paranoid
So you
fucking.
kind of you felt like some paranoia of getting assaulted or something while in this club, but then confronted it and like just went into.
Went in deep and then went into
Mhm.
ego death, basically
Wow.
just surrendered. And then the light, just the heart, I could just energetic feel my heart. I could like the energy surge. And then I was and I could see the face of the goddess, like, and just kind of be in and embraced by her. And so yeah, so then I come through that and I'm like, oh, okay, well, good job in your paranoid, whatever. That was a good choice, but that's obviously not happening. But then I was like,
Hmm.
okay, well, what's going on with my, in my relationship crisis? And in medicine vision, saw, and there was like even each time I tell this, like I kind of realize more identical things, but kind of thematically similar. Um, saw that, whatever I had on my side was irrelevant, and what was solely and only important is that I was jealous. I could see in the medicine that when my girlfriend had come back from these amazing adventures, erotic and otherwise, in Asia, like I was jealous and was cutting her down to fit back into my narrow little college box,
Mm-hmm.
and in a thousand different ways, and just could just envision to see how beautiful her arrows and compassion were flowing in Asia, and just like being so beautiful. And I was just like, dude, better you die than be in the way of her light.
Mm.
Died again, and
Wow.
like fell away. Like there was this like, and as I felt, I could see this like demonic horde of like assaulting her light, and then her light exploded and embraced me with infinite forgiveness, infinite love, like just like, and bam, I'm like back in it, like see the goddess again, like I'm back in the light. Now I'm like, wow, like, um, my granddad's right. This is what my granddad's been talking about all my life and selling way over my head. All the
Mm-hmm.
faith traditions at their best are
Your
pointing at
granddad who started Bronner's.
yeah, Dr.
Yeah.
Bronner. So
Mm-hmm.
he himself, he had his parents were killed in the Holocaust. He was third generation German Jewish soap maker. He came over in 29. And yeah, his two sisters got out, my great aunts. One ended up in a kibbutz in then Palestine. Another came here to the States, became a professor at UMass Boston. Um, and but yeah, he saw his response to the Holocaust and the huge trauma of it all was that in a nuclear armed world, if we don't realize our transcendent unity across religious and ethnic divides and all the spiritual giants, um, cross faith traditions are on this one love tip, that we're going to kill ourselves, we're going to all destroy ourselves. And so that's what's on the bottle of every soap we sell. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so I mean, but growing up, I grew up in a Reaganite household. My dad is a
Mm.
beautiful mom, but my granddad was not a good father. Basically, bailed
Mm.
as a father, going off to save the world. And my dad's mom died when he was really young, and he came up in a series of foster homes. Went to the Navy when he was young, and so I grew up working with him, and he was, for him, like that all one God faith. For him, he associated all that with bailing as a father, and
Yeah.
he was pretty much atheist. Although late in life, had a powerful conversion experience of amazing grace, and he unpacked that in a very traditional Christian sense, but had
Mm-hmm.
the full motherfucking deal go down
Yeah.
in a beautiful way. Um, and which I've seen in a lot of other medicine, and been with my dad and seeing like the Christ Phoenix, like just in his heart, just like warming every fiber of his being. And yeah. Um, but yeah, I'm in the
So
club. So yeah,
you're
so yeah.
yeah. But recap, you're saying so your grandfather who found Emmanuel, who founded Dr. Bronner's, was on this all one tip. And then yeah, your dad, because he kind of like your grandfather wasn't there as much, was like almost the opposite. But then in this club, your multiple ego death experiences, you kind of it clicked for you, even though you were brought up in a household where it was kind of rejected. Is that kind of accurate? Or
Yeah, I mean, my dad was atheist. My mom was, Protestant in a traditional sense. I mean, not in any like direct mystical whatever. Um, and yeah, so my granddad, all my life. I mean, I didn't see him like that much, but whenever I did, he was just coming off the mountaintop. Super
yeah.
important. His grandkids understood that we must unite the spaceship Earth. We're all one or none. Like just Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha. Just like really
Mm-hmm.
going off on this tip. So now I'm like, holy shit. My granddad's right. This
Yeah.
transcendent light is in fact the ground of our existence, and God's
Mm-hmm.
real. Oh my gosh. So now I'm like, well, wait a minute, God, now that you're real, like I'm in this club and fucking rape, murder, all kinds of the worst shit right now is happening all around the world. Like, how does that go together with this transcendent love? And then I was microscoped to nothing, and it's kind of like Job style, like just the I am that I am, like divine God self on like all the mega level of being, living, dying, rebirthing, just like doing. It was like God self can do, be to God self what God self is, just the whatever. It was just like there was no explanation over it. It was just like fucking what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But then I saw Jesus stepping in and kind of just stepping into the maelstrom and just calm and compassionate and not trying to explain it, not complaining about it, just stepping in like, you know, and I was like, wow, that's it. That's where, we're here to serve. We're here to get down. I want to be like that. And like, and, and then and I'll give some takes on what all this means, I guess, in integration after. But then the final test was, so after I got through all this guy, I met this gay guy earlier in the week, Henry or something. He was super sweet. We were in a cannabis cafe, and it was like just like a comfortable, cool exchange. It was just like a cool energy. It was like just really dropping in. And he had been trafficked as a kid, and he was a prostitute, and just shared on the real. And it was just. But now in the club, she's Helena. She's cross-dressed and kind of comes up all dancing, and I'm just like, whoa, I don't got to deal with this. I just like fucking died a bunch of times. I just got married to Chris on a mega fucking level, you know? And then
Yes.
it was like wrong answer, son. And I'm in this kind of like hot, cold dialogue with my soul, God. And I was like, wrong answer. Boom, you're back in the hole. And like, and then I'm like, dude, like, why would you not open your heart to anybody coming with love and joy in their heart? You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
sleep with them, but just, and just bam, like just my heart blew open again. And like, just like in the light and like, and
Yeah.
um yeah, so and then I was like fucking spiritual emergency, borderline schizophrenic for like 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
having no interpretive frameworks for all this. But met some
Yes.
people and was on my path, and read Groff and Jungian authors and
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Campbell, and in the way I unpacked it, I found Jungian analysis being pretty insightful in particular. But like, so like what I was going through, um, like with Chris, and like like my anima, like my own soul, like the Jungian term for anima, like that I was projecting my own soul, or Chris was carrying in vision my own soul energy, and that my soul was showing up to me in vision as Chris, and that what I was doing to Chris, I was doing to my own soul, like basically crucifying my own soul with my own like like the whatever masculine patriarchal, like jealous, insecure,
Mm-hmm.
attacking
Chris
my
is
own
your
feminine.
was your partner then, or
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So envision like it was like carrying my soul energy in my own feminine nature and my own, like I was just basically crucifying. And when I like stopped and died and stopped doing that, like then that my own soul embraced me into, like that's what it was about. And into the love and into the light, and kind of like Atman Brahman style.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then
So you had a
uh,
6 month spiritual
yeah,
emergence
and I would
after
just say
that.
the point about the God self too was, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't about the relevant insight there was that there is no God over there and us over here. It's all God self. We're part of God self. And
Mm-hmm.
and and then Helena, I mean, now is also my soul, like just in my own feminine nature. And again, like my own most liberated. Um Here, got it.
No problem.
Hey Mike, I'm on a
Podcast.
yeah, okay. Oh, okay, bye bye. Sorry, I thought I was hanging up, but I guess I answered it.
No problem.
Uh, so yeah, just like, fast forward, I've like come out as he, they, and just really, I mean, I've been known for a while, like my gender fluidity, but
Mm-hmm.
just in a cultural moment of disaster that's going on with the right wing attack / my own personal process, have like wanted to, declare. I have a blog about it. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of understanding and celebrating the gender fluidity and like and just how harmful the gender binary is and patriarchy is on the planet, not just to women, although they bear the brunt, but to men as well, and the way we internally shame and police ourselves and each other. And um but yeah. And then, and then
I
just putting together like my own like experience of like my initial threshold experience too. Yeah, I mean, it's all just rape and that whether it's like I was going through archetypally all the different configurations of like myself, being victim, myself as perpetrator, and
mm-hmm,
just like kind of going through archetypally these modes.
mm-hmm,
And and it's very, in a sense, like the to live you must die kind of thing, and like going
mm-hmm.
through the cross kind of thing. And
Yeah.
but I also see a lot of Demeter, Persephone, Eleusinian mystery, and I see a lot of analogs to Demeter, Persephone myth and Jehovah, Jesus, and on the archetypal level. And Brian Marescu and Immortality Key really shows the syncretism between the two traditions. Um and yeah, and I'm very much on the all one path and respect in all different traditions, and have had amazing experiences of all kinds. And but I think just because I got imprinted with that Christian upbringing, like that, I think the divine shows up in whatever way
Mm-hmm.
it's for you. I mean, like when you're ready, it's that's and I love the author, blanking on his name. Um, but his yeah, but his I can actually go grab it. But he's written a book, but his whole thing is about the participatory. It's like divine enactment, like when a soul encounters the divine, or it's like it's a creative enactment. It's like the divine and the soul, like it's a creative bam,
Like
and it's
co-creation between the divine and the person, because they're really all creating
yeah,
together. They're not really separate.
yeah, totally. It's a dance. And so it's like, so all faith traditions are true in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. I mean, they can all be part of that magical, mysterious, divine dance. And um, and all of them, of course, can be and often are the exact opposite, and are basically ways of demonizing and vilifying each other and walling us
Mm-hmm.
off the source. But yeah, anyway, so that was like the big origin story there for, and
Yeah.
that wasn't that short, but
No, thank you for sharing. Um,
no.
yeah, I can relate to a lot of your experiences that we've shared before and we've talked in the past. Yeah, it sounds like yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. The whole kind of dying and seeing the light and like having to constantly re-die and re-die and re-die, like um yeah, just a little bit of my origin story. I was raised Catholic, was atheist for a while in college, although I was studying philosophy and criminal justice, so I was still like in the pursuit of truth myself. And had some pretty breakthrough experiences, mostly on acid in college. But I too had like kind of like spiritual emergence dying experience in 2017 where I thought I was Jesus. Here's my coming out story. People have heard it before, but now it's official on the podcast. Why not? Why not do it on the podcast,
Mhm.
right? Um, and but then I gradually like learned about the concept of like Christ as different than it's not just Jesus's last name, but Christ is in and through everything. It's like the enfleshment of love and of spirit. And Jesus maybe just showed us like, well, here's what it looks like when it's attached to a human. It's like, look, it's like, whoa. And we can all tap into that. And yeah, I had my spiritual emergence for like 2 or 3 months, maybe, yeah, 3 or 4, where I had no framework, no interpretive framework. I was, it wasn't super healthy. I like kind of had a messiah complex for a little while and then eventually came down. But I did land in a Catholic tradition again. I just found it so enriching. And I don't think everyone needs to become Catholic necessarily, obviously, or even Christian. I think the divine is like a
Mhm.
kaleidoscope, the Godhead bursts forth in whatever way is going to most likely to get into the inner recesses of someone's heart and soul to show their likeness. And um yeah, for me, I felt I had a lot of sober synchronicities leading me back to Catholicism. I felt like that's my kind of path.
Mhm.
Um, but and I had that I could really relate to the gender experience as well. Myself, I remember it very vividly at COSM, Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, having on. I think I was taking something at COSM. I don't know what their official policy is, but maybe I was tripping at COSM. Okay, and I know first time anyone's done that, and I remember just feeling and seeing like all the genders like blending and the beauty of and the cornucopia of
Mhm.
expression and yeah, it was really like, oh yeah, why this is absolutely a part of the Holy Spirit and God's plan to have more than just two genders. And um just seeing that flowering was very impactful, so I can relate. um yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm just flashing on Avatar: The Last Airbender, one pretty much the greatest anime cartoon ever made. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with it,
I've watched
but
a little bit. Not I
yeah,
watched
but
a
the
video on the
fire.
chakras. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's really great. That's a great one. But yeah, I mean, basically, it's the four nations corresponding to four elements, and it's kind of vaguely Asiatic slash Native American um, mythos and inhabiting each in a different kind of martial arts style within the benders of each nation. But and then an avatar born every generation to kind of keep the balance. But this time, the avatar's locked up in ice, and the Fire Nation's going nuts. And it's like got the hardcore like Taekwondo, like very masculine, aggressive. Like they got the one truth, and they're going nuts on the world.
Hmm.
And then like the feminine, like the waterbenders, like it's like Tai Chi, but like yeah, it's cool. Like as like a cultural like um how do you say mirror of the real
Yeah.
process we're going through in the world of like what I experienced there. I mean, like these collective fucking traumas and harms go through each of us, and we each gotta like do this battle and like understand like whoa, like
Hmm.
masculine's way out of balance and fucked up right now, and like
Yeah,
pressing the feminine, and yeah.
totally. it's it's a mosaic of divinity that each tradition has a part to play in it.
Yeah.
And I haven't watched Avatar, but every time I've heard you speak about it, it's made me want to check it out. There's like
Yeah,
some
it's
good
pretty
religious
tremendous.
allegories there in the show. Yeah.
Well, and yeah, we made some fan art, like a Dr. Bronner's fan art, like
Oh.
15 years ago. I mean, we would have sold a billion bottles of it, but we would have had to made a deal with Nickelodeon. But it was like, um, yeah, but I mean, it was like, Mike and Brian, they're like the creators, like the force has moved from Lucas to them, and like they're the true Star Wars of our generation, and Lucas just flailed and lost it, unfortunately, except for Rogue One.
Lucasfilm.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Oh,
just
okay.
but like the archetypal impact of the
Yeah.
trilogy on the culture. I feel like Avatar, like, is on that level, and
Yeah.
back Mark Hamill voices Fire Lord Ozai, like the Emperor figure, is voiced by Mark Hamill, and it kind of like, um, just as like one little synchronistic, or
Yeah.
maybe not so much, like who's carrying that torch now or in recent times. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
Well, that's how I've kind of thought of it, as like with my psychedelic experiences, like we don't really know what I think spirituality is in the West, you know? And I think with my experiences kind of like kickstarted like this whole process that is very, like dying, being reborn, having insights about your own wounding and the collective unconscious woundings and all these things. And like, um, I do see, yeah, a lot of these stories and myths like Avatar, Star Wars, other popular ones do contain like the kind of like allegorical imprint, but without the skeleton key of the experience yourself. They might just seem like interesting stories, but they're actually kind of like, as you're saying, it sounds like they contain truths in them that can kind of inform how we think of things. Um,
Yeah, I mean, like in all the great spiritual traditions and all the stories, and I think that's when you start to understand, like, don't take them literally, but archetypally and metaphorically and symbolically, they're all like resonating. in important ways, and it can all be help us on our soul's quest to
Mm-hmm.
love and joy. And just when you're saying like spiritual path, in like just like in some sense, like there's nothing else but spirit. It's only our
Mm-hmm.
own. It's like everything's Buddha nature, but we just, whatever our consciousness, like we just are not tuned to that frequency most of the time, but that through practices and disciplines and medicines can open ourselves up to that magical mystery we're living and breathing in all the
Yes.
time. Yeah.
And also community. Like as you said,
Mm,
you did
bam.
not yes, you felt like you maybe lacked a interpretive framework when you were going through that spiritual emergence, and I definitely was the only person when I was in a mental hospital for like 6 days. And the only person who like kind of took me seriously was the pastor there, or the chaplain, who was like gave me some like Rilke, the poet, to read, and other
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
yeah. Right
mystical.
on. Book of
Yeah,
the
and
yeah.
um, but yeah, so I think community. I mean, our slogan's "Community is the medicine," the name of this podcast, but I think community is, I think, one of the best vehicles for taking care of a lot of these spillovers and risks, and not just risks of health, but also that those insights might get reshut into a kind of dark patriarchal culture, not actually blossom. But
Mm.
just to I'm curious, so what does the phrase community-based healing evoke for you or bring up?
Yeah. And let me just say also, because it's interesting you had that social justice tip there in college. I
Mm-hmm.
was, didn't it wasn't until Amsterdam, but part of all that big experience was dedicating my life to ending the drug war and
Mm-hmm.
integrating psychedelic medicines as fast as
Right.
possible. Like that was definitely a big takeaway from all that.
Did you do that? Did you get into activism after your experiences in Amsterdam?
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually came back, sold all my stuff, and was going to move back to Amsterdam to be a cannabis activist and be an entrepreneur, and do, and that didn't work out. And my then girlfriend had gotten pregnant and then miscarried. And she was going to come to Amsterdam, but I went back to the Boston area and became a mental health counselor. Like I wasn't like, even though I was in a basically a mental health crisis on some level, I mean, I was functional, and became a mental health counselor for paranoid schizophrenic populations, primarily around in Watertown and Waltham, around McLean's, like a famous like mental health hospital.
Your
Um,
partner to this, or you were
I
doing
did.
this? Oh
No,
wow.
she finished up school,
Yeah.
and it was interesting because like whatever I was dealing with, I would just park at the door and just show up for people and journal,
Mm-hmm.
meet with them, and I was really good just because in a way, we understood the territory, and
Mm-hmm.
was really good at just helping people ground out. And then, but then in a 4 hour, 8 hour shift, I'd have 4 hours of myself to read and write and journal and just kind of really go deep, and became vegan in this time as well. Just seeing the disaster of Western consumption on the planet, and
Mm-hmm.
large part driven by animal agriculture, and just seeing my own choice and participation in it and renouncing it. Fast forward, I appreciate high animal welfare, pasture-based livestock operations where the animal can live a good life and has a humane, quick death.
Mm-hmm.
But that's very small, like 1% or less in our culture, and but in solidarity with that. But the vegan discipline is I think a good one to
Mm-hmm.
just not participate in the horse show of our factory farming, industrial agricultural reality. Um, but anyways, so community healing. So yeah, absolutely. How different it would be if we, and in a way, I think that there were some communities there, although maybe it was best that I didn't plug into them because who knows what cult weirdness
Yeah.
we get. I mean, that's part of the thing. But I think like with this renaissance that communities that can really support each other, have gone through
Mm-hmm.
these experiences, can help interpret and navigate, support, be accountable to, um, that that's crucial. And that as this, and I know one of your questions here is my integrated theory of change with the
Yeah.
And
unified field theory.
yeah, of drug policy reform. And it's, it's basically, um, on one hand, the FDA approval process that's, generated a lot of the clinical data and studies that's really moving the culture.
Mm-hmm.
The Roland Griffiths and John Hopkins and NYU and all the amazing work that's being done with psilocybin and MDMA. I'm on the board of MAPS, and we're been moving MDMA through FDA approval process, and that's a very important way of bringing healing to those with very narrow diagnoses who can qualify, whether like treatment-resistant PTSD or
Mm-hmm.
depression. And it will hopefully be insurable, although
Mm-hmm.
there's a trick to all that, especially the therapy component. Um, but presumably we're going to figure this out, and that's great. And then also regulated access programs like in Oregon and now Colorado, where all adults can avail themselves of a regulated, like a facilitated session. You don't have to have a qualifying diagnosis. You can just do it for personal growth. We're all struggling
Mm-hmm.
in life, and we should all be able to avail ourselves. And that's good in that it really does tend to optimize set and setting and allow for deep release into your experience. Um, but that all comes with a cost, and both routes do. And and then like you have a big experience, like what happens next. And so I think the community healing model is really crucial because one, it's the most affordable and economically accessible. You can grow your own medicine or grow it together in a church or self-regulating community.
Mm-hmm.
And then having good screening and facilitation protocols is, Santo Daime is like an example of a church that's done this. And now there's Sacred Plant Alliance, which is a consortium of entheogenic churches. And then your own initiative here, the remind me of community healing. It's the
Journey cohort program.
Journey cohort program. Yeah, I mean, I think these are crucial because, well, and the other big, how do you say, pro or argument in favor of this more regulated entry point to psychedelic healing is that the majority of the culture that's psychedelically naive are not going to go, generally speaking. My mom or a lot of
Yeah.
people I know are not going to go to the community healing, ayahuasca circle, but they will go to the kind of more traditional looking, feeling thing they heard
Yeah.
about Hopkins, Um, but once you have that, once you get that comfort, then you know, paying $1,000 every time to, and then there's this whole fallacy that you can be cured in some kind of one and done
Mm-hmm.
session, a few sessions, and you're not going to be depressed anymore. And like, and it's more of an ongoing relationship. And while I think you can do significant work, especially with acute trauma, in a few sessions, that it's more about a lifelong relationship
Mm-hmm.
and to be in community where you're in that mutual camaraderie and support. It's not, you're not paying an arm and a leg to, have regular medicine experience, whatever your rhythm might be,
Yeah.
quarterly, whatever. Um, and yeah, so I think that the models very much complement,
Mm-hmm.
then, and, like a veteran who gets healed in like a more regulated kind of program can then plug into like a veteran focused,
Mm-hmm. Affinity
self-regulating
group or
affinity group.
yeah,
Yeah. And continue to experience medicine and, being,
totally.
and even there, like even on the regulated side, bringing more of that communal healing model and group therapy model where vets will prepare together for like an ayahuasca experience and then be in that facilitated experience together and then be integrating together is
Mm-hmm.
like much more powerful in a lot of ways than this one-on-one model. That's
I think so too. Yeah, obviously I have a lot of thoughts on this. And yeah, I agree with you. I think people like moms are not going to come to BPS's, DJ Journey cohort unless they're, of course, DJs. Going to launch that
yeah,
soon.
really cool moms.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's some cool moms here in Brooklyn. Yeah, they're going to want to, people are, and rightfully so, or want to go to a more like medical experience if that's what they're familiar with. But I do think the kind of more regulated lane, I see there's kind of being three lanes, like the kind of decrim gray market lane the
Hmm.
state regulated lane, and then the federally regulated lane. State is really only Oregon and Colorado for now. Federally, obviously, any ketamine or FDA approved places, and then decrim gray areas, places where it's decriminalized or not, and people are just going to go underground. And I do think, yeah, the regulated approach will be kind of a marketing mechanism, if you want to call it that, for the underground. Because, like you said, after people pay $1,000 a few times and get familiar with, like, okay, I could do this for $200 with these cool
Hmm.
folks at this community center, or just buy it on my own and do it with my friends. And yeah, I think the underground decrim lane is going to be much larger in scale than the regulated markets. People are still getting, even if it's with a doctor, the cultural baggage of psychedelics, as you know, is still quite a lot. So people are going to like still have to get used, the idea of going to a doctor to have a trip is still going to be a lot. So yeah, I'm I think a community-based ecosystem is going to be really critical to help foster.
Hmm. Yeah, no, we're really excited to support Journey Cohort and Sacred Plant Alliance on their side. Um, just how do you promote good models of self-regulating communities, good screening, good facilitation, good
Totally.
safety, support, knowing when someone isn't ready to sit with medicine and all that. And really appreciate that how important it is to promote, these really good self-regulating models, which I think is like
Yeah.
the how do you say the tsunami that's kind of underappreciated in the movement at large, but is the like tsunami
Tsunami.
tsunami like in Denver at the MAPS conference. I mean, there's so many homegrown churches, people just
Yeah.
talking about it, it's
Mm-hmm.
just happening in a huge way,
Yeah.
and still it's kind of a little underground, but
Yeah. But that's, I think, one of the beauties of the community model is accountability and stakeholders within the community, like the facilitators, the
yeah.
staff, the community members. And I think things like democratic governance kind of form as an informal accountability network until formal institutions can build up over time. Um,
Yeah.
so kind of formalizing, that's kind of our belief with the kind of co-op model, that democratic governance provides like a layer of protection so that the kind of, it's like a checks and balances amongst the facilitators, the community members, and the staff to kind of keep it safe. Um,
Yeah, right on. Not get cult of personality ish or whatever.
yes. And also, like you said, cults are definitely, a risk as well. Have you Well, do you go to kind of community-based experiences yourself? Like, what's your experience in community and psychedelics?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would say in the last 5 years, especially, I mean, I've had experiences periodically, like in ayahuasca circles and stuff, some really important ones, but wasn't maybe in the last 6 years really got a lot more intentional. I would say ceremonial and community was more challenging historically for me. Um, but now I really appreciate. I'm in a training program right now, the AW training program.
Yes. Yeah.
It's really, really amazing. And we get to go to a different medicine culture each year. So I got to drink Yahe with IE Kofan people down in Ecuador last April. This April, I was in Wirakuta with Marikames, just going so deep with peyote medicine, and they're offering on their terms and sharing their gifts and insights, and just blowing my heart, mind, soul wide open, and yeah, just so powerful, and just the you know feel and get to participate in these indigenous wizards,
Mm-hmm.
wisdom keepers that are work with the medicine lineage that's just so vast and huge, and um yeah, and
So you've
then
been a part of a bunch of different like
yeah,
containers. Yeah.
yeah, and closer to home here. Actually, on Saturday we're gonna be in a Wachuma ceremony. Um, really love Wachuma, and just
That's
it's like
San
San
Pedro.
Pedro, yeah, it's a little more, it's masculine, it's more gentle. It's like it's, you're more like emotionally, uh, how do you say, you're like, you're much more present within the ceremony itself, like with each other, and you're sharing on the deep and real and praying on the deep and real together. And it's less like, like ayahuasca or iboga, you're somewhat in your own lane. I mean, you're all in the
Mm-hmm.
field, but really appreciate the mescaline containing cacti is like an incredible ally. Um, and yeah, so definitely, we're going to be doing those monthly now here.
Cool.
Yeah, and just like members of our community, we've had like three different homies since Denver kind of spinning the crisis, and just realizing we need to start applying what we're learning in awe and just holding
Mm-hmm.
monthly circles, and just people can come and just, yeah, heal together and share on the real what's going on and not suffer alone. And yeah.
Yeah. I really yeah, I think community is the most supportive container someone can have when going through or preparing for a psychedelic experience. My kind of bailiwick is that we don't really have a cultural container for community-based healing. Like the indigenous cultures and Native Americans do, like it's something familiar to their culture, but it's a very homogenous culture local to that environment. And we're in a very like postmodern, pluralistic landscape. So my kind of thinking is that we need to build, that's what I think psychedelic co-ops kind of are, is like a cultural container for community-based healing. Like if you think about like gyms are kind of a cultural container for like fitness. Like fitness is something that can happen anywhere, your backyard, a mountain, a weight room in your gym. But a gym kind of harnesses that process of fitness. It's like that's where you go.
Mhm.
And I think we kind of need those for community-based healing in a way that is like integrated in kind of weirdo culture, Western educate, like the West, a way that's familiar to us. Anyways, that's kind of a little what I hope we can help build. Um,
Yeah, I know it's a beautiful vision. Um, and yeah, look forward to seeing these co-ops flourish across the land. And yeah, man.
yeah.
Yeah, burning,
Well,
we just
yeah.
burned this last burn was
Were you?
extra exciting, but
Yes, you were there at the Mud Man
yeah, but
2023. Yes.
power community was, on fire, just kind of coming through it all. And it's so beautiful, and our camp is really wonderful. And just like, yeah, just in its way, it's a ceremony. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a little more what, it's a big week in a big city. But yeah, there's a lot of ceremony kind of in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of community, in a different way, and to your point of like our culture is kind of postmodern. Yeah, there's different ways that we
Yeah.
can get the medicines and like learn from indigenous, but then also creating our own. And yeah,
Yeah.
to bring intention and love and community, like
Yeah.
no matter what. Yeah.
And I'm hoping for these centers to be where Buddhists, Christians, atheists, neo shamans, a mixture of they both can have their own kind of sub communities within the community, and the communities kind of interweave together to provide safety and support. But because of someone I've had in Brooklyn, I've had people from the Hasidic Jewish community come to some of our meetings at Brooklyn Psychedelic Society and say, I've been depressed for 20 years, and if my community knew I was coming to this meeting, I would get like exiled. But I just need I've been reading these articles and I need help, and like
Mm,
because people are they're gonna see the Johns Hopkins and the NYU studies, and they're gonna be like, well, where do I
yeah.
turn to? So yeah, I think community-based approaches, whether in a co-op, in a retreat, in a clinic, just pure support. Yeah, that's kind of my, I don't want to be a one-trick pony, but that's my main jam.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
So, are there any, we're close coming into the hour now, any other things you'd like to share with the listeners of the podcast for what you're currently working on, like legislation or activism wise in the psychedelic world?
Yeah, well, I guess hopefully Governor Newsom's going to sign SB 58 in a law any day now. I think he has till October 14th. There's no guarantees, and he's very much a political animal. And, you know, but hopefully our coalition, bipartisan coalition, will give him the whatever perceived sense of safety he needs
Mm-hmm.
to sign that. That'll decriminalize all the plant and fungal medicines for personal use. We unfortunately the legislation was amended substantially, so it's nowhere near as ambitious in scope as when it was in original form, but it still has at its heart, you can grow and possess, and you can't share, quote unquote, I guess, until there's some kind of other group that's being set up, um, that's going to issue some kind of guidelines for facilitation on January 1st of 25. And that might be when decriminalization also kicks in. I'm not sure exactly. There's all this kind of stuff happening in committees. But community is wily and wise, and just basically, I think it will give very good protection to self-regulating community groups. And yeah, I mean, I think there's ways to share and whatever. I think it will really remove police interference from community healing groups in a very real way. It's not quite, like the advantage of like Colorado. You write a ballot measure, you get to like say what you want, and that's what gets passed. When you go the legislative route, it just goes through all these committees, and they chop it up. But we've got the core. You can grow your own, can sit for each other, have medicine, and so I think it's important. Massachusetts is moving kind of on the Colorado model, a ballot measure there. That's mostly what's top of mind. I know there's legislation moving in other states to various degrees, but as far as what is imminent, it's those two. I'll just say on the religious tip too, or community healing, the Shefa, the Jewish group, Rabbi Zach set up, and then Ligare, at Hunt Priest, the Episcopalian priest, working in more traditional, kind of community church denomination settings. And Brian Rescue himself, I think, is doing a lot of work on kind of religious use, and talking to the Pope and various government regulators. And I don't know all of what he's up to, but
Yeah.
but just some interesting, ways that self-regulating spiritual / not spiritual uses coming into the culture. And so exciting times, and trying to support all of it.
Well,
Yeah.
I gotta say, man, I really, really just admire you for wearing your heart in your sleeve and your values on your sleeve, and fusing them with the work Dr. Bronner's is doing in support of the psychedelic movement. I think there's very few people who do what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for your support for our projects here at BPS.
Yeah. Well,
So,
likewise, brother. Thanks for, rocking the world like you are, and bringing this beautiful model into existence.
also,
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed my
Oh,
local bike shop. I hope you
right
don't send a
on.
cease and desist, but it is for bicycling. It is a Dr. Bronner's inspired ride bikes water bottle.
Oh, righteous, man.
I told
Yeah.
them I was going to be interviewing you. My local bikes were down the street here in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and they gave me this bottle, but it's kind of cute. I told them I'd give them their lawyer's contact info if you need it, but
Oh, I didn't
just
even see it.
you didn't see
I
it.
already
Just
forgot.
joking. It was a
Yeah,
vision.
yeah, yeah. But actually, me and Mia, my wife, got married last year, June, and made a wedding soap. It was cannabis, ganja rose. It's like real rose oil and cannabis terpene scented, and it's got Khalil Gibran's "On Love" on the label. Um,
Nice.
but the first ingredient is lysergic acid diethylamide. So, but then it's asterisk to say, in spirit only, molecule not included. But that's yeah. Some other
Yes.
like I'm not showing our lawyers.
I do always get questioned when the magic chocolate bars were out. People are like, wait a minute. BPS, magic chocolate bars from Bronner's. What? Like, don't worry. It's just really good peppermint chocolate. Tastes.
Yeah, totally. And my we're not doing anything too psychoactive anytime soon, but we're talking about doing a collaboration with Paul Stamets and getting like a lion's mane extract and chocolate, and then
Cool.
telling the story of Shaman Santa, for how like a
Oh, the
day, like
deer
offering some,
pee thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
do something like that.
we
That
can
might
end on that if you'd like. Or do you have the story or the? Do you
oh
know the
yeah,
story? It's
yeah. Well, the Santa, I guess, Saint Nick. I mean, he's like basically built, kind of amalgam of whoever Saint Nick was, and the Siberian shamans were, and I think that culture that word shaman is somewhat of a imprecise category across, very different cultures, but um, the shaman of this, I think it was in Finland or something, the Siberian indigenous people would, I guess it was, I forget what kind of mushroom, but some kind
fly
of mushroom.
amanita or Amanita muscaria,
Yeah,
maybe fly.
yeah, but it
Yeah.
would, something about it being activated, like the deers would eat it, and when they pee it out, it's extra activated, and um, but that the shaman would kind of come, that the domiciles would, you would enter through the roof, and you dressed in red, and you had reindeer. Yeah, it was the reindeer, and you would go on, you know, fly on a journey.
Yes.
I don't know exactly all the resonances, but I guess it's pretty, New York Times, actually, if you Google like Shaman Santa New York Times, there's actually a fun like video that New York Times put together a few years ago on it all.
Yes. Well, cool.
No,
Good.
and then give all our profits to, you know, psilocybin research or the Journey cohort program or something like that.
Yes. Well, we'd be a happy beneficiary or recipient. Well, thank you so much for joining me, David. It's really grateful to have you as our first guest on the podcast.
Yeah, well, right on, brother. Honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Take it easy.
Bam.